it's so wonderful to be with you all today. So we are going to make this, excuse me, super interactive. I know it's the end of your day, and we want to make sure that you have a tool to leave with for actionable change when you go back to reality. So as my bio was read, I have had a lot of pivot points along my career. And as somebody that speaks at conferences and trains and does workshop with women leaders and our men that are also allies, what we have for you today is a set of tools for you to walk away with some ideas about how to build your winning career game plan. Follow along in the handout. I'm going to have some self-guided exercises for you to complete along the way so that when you walk out the door here at 3 o'clock, you'll have a starting point of your winning career game plan and perhaps some input from those in the room. Sound fun? Okay, so let me explain a little bit about myself. So as mentioned, I am founder and CEO of Pivot Point. I started my own speaking business about 5 years ago. And after having spent a lot of time in corporate America, experiencing a lot of pivot points, I discovered that it really was necessary for women leaders to have tools for positive change. So I went to a lot of women's leadership conferences where we had conversations about quote unquote challenges facing women in the workplace and how we would overcome them. So the things that surfaced a lot were confidence, negotiation, right? Probably some topics you've talked about today, influence, how to build relationships, how to help one another. And I thought, if only there were a set of tools that we could actually map this out and create our own experiences from. So that's where Pivot Point was born. Literally on the back of a napkin, I wrote down kind of the 6 key areas, one of which that you're seeing today about building a winning career game plan. And I have gotten super passionate about what are the next tools to continue this conversation going. And so having spent a lot of time in rooms like this with women talking to one another, I've noticed recently some men coming into the conversation and wanting to be allies. So I'm not going to talk a lot about this today, but I do have a book, one, How Male Allies Support Women for Gender Equality, and who you're seeing over here is my real purpose and calling. So I have a 5-year-old daughter, Jane, and she is absolutely my purpose and why I do the work that I do. So I think 20 years from now, if she's in the workforce, if we're still talking about pay equality and gender equality, and she's already having conversations with me about things she's noticing for gender in the classroom already. I'm like, if you knew what your mom did for a living, you wouldn't say these things. So it starts from a young age. And unfortunately, a lot of the behaviors we teach our children when they're boys and girls about taking risks and not taking risks and pleasing others and not pleasing others, and boys will be boys. That script is not helpful when we enter the workforce and have to play by the rules that are largely designed by men, okay? So if there's one thing I think we can arm ourselves with as women is knowing what we want. I promise you, your male counterparts, whether you're a student, alum, sponsor, wherever you are in your organization, I promise you your male counterparts know what they want and tell people what they want, right? A lot of the research shows that men, right out of the get-go, day one on a job, will start articulating, I want to be partner, or I see myself in this position in 3 years. And like women are like, oh, I'll wait. I'll wait until someone taps me on the shoulder for that opportunity, right? Or certainly they'll recognize my hard work and reward me with a promotion. It doesn't work that way, right? And so if there's one thing you take away from today, what is it that I want? And then how can I feel more comfortable being bold and speaking up and asking for what I want? So with that in mind, I want to start with that question. So what do you want? This is one of my favorite coaching questions. I ask all my clients I work with about this. And I want you to close your eyes for a minute and just think about the day that you've had spending time with these amazing women. And if you were to think about what do you want personally, professionally, what is important to you? And think about those aspirations, those goals, elements of what you want from your career and life. And what I want you to do is write down everything that just came to mind on the first part of your handout. No filters. Every idea is a good idea. This is a judgment-free zone. What popped in your brain? When you closed your eyes and thought about, what do I want? Just let it free flow out. I'll give you a moment to think about that. What do you want? Personally, professionally, career? And if you're afraid to write something down, you definitely should write it down. So the reason I'm having you write things down is because when we write things down, we lock it into our brains. Our brains start to see it, and they start to believe it. When we have something written down in the forms of a goal or a plan, your behavior actually starts to map to that. Even subconsciously, you may not even notice it. But until you do that, it's really easy to say things like, I'm going to try, I can do that. Right? That's wishy-washy language. Your brain already knows, like, she's said these things before, she doesn't really mean them. Right? We're going to try on some new language today. And we're going to talk about I will, I am. These are much more affirming and much more believable to our subconscious. So I want you to get comfortable with some of the things that you wrote down. Willing them to happen means owning it. Saying I am this, or I will achieve some of these things, okay? So let's keep this in the forefront of our brain, what we want, and let's think about how we could map some of our behaviors and actions to support this. So what are the benefits of building a career game plan? So when I did the research for Pivot Point, I interviewed women all over the country, different functional areas, different industries, different points in their careers, different generations. I really wanted a diverse sample of what it took to be a successful women leader. And without a doubt, what women told me over and over again is that I had a plan, okay? I knew what I wanted. Now, corporations, for those of you in the corporate environment, who's from the corporate environment? We love these things called individual development plans. Who has one of these? They're like 20 pages long, and by the time you finally get through it, it's like, geez, I don't even know what I want anymore, right? So our career game plan, and I'm happy to share the workbook and everything that goes with this for more, is one page. And it's one page intentionally because it needs to be simple. You need to slide it over the table when you're having coffee with somebody or meeting with your manager and say, this is what I'm all about, right? This is who I am. This is what I want. Here are my goals. I would love your support, right? And that feels really authentic to you. It's a really nice way to ask for what you want in a very clear, concise way. So as women, these are all generalizations, but they are based on some research, so forgive me if this is not true of you. I'm not trying to put people in buckets. In general, women kind of beat around the bush with what we want. Well, I was kind of thinking about this, and then I thought about this, and I have experience in this, right? We kind of go all different directions, and people get confused by that, and they're like, I'm not sure what she wants, but that was interesting, you know? So instead, let's try to get really clear and concise. So the 4 elements that we put on our career game plan, one is the purpose statement. So we're going to lead you through an exercise. I'm going to show you some examples of what those look like. So people call these sometimes your personal mission statement. I have a little bit of a different flavoring on this one. I think about it as, just as I introduced myself to you today, I develop leaders, train women to build winning career game plans while promoting gender equality in the workplace. 3 bullet points. If I'm in an elevator with somebody in that elevator pitch scenario, I can easily say, this is what I'm all about, right? So having kind of a Twitter-length statement about you that rolls off your tongue, that's super simple, it's very crisp and clear and personal to you is really, really important. I also use this purpose statement in all of my social media handles. So on LinkedIn, it's my tagline, on Instagram, on Twitter, it's everywhere, on my website, front and center, my business card. Every experience people have with me is very consistent, and they know that I do those 3 things. The same should go for you, right? People need to clearly know who you are and what you're all about. So that's the purpose statement. So think about that as kind of the umbrella statement of which the other parts of your career plan will hang from. So the second key piece is goals. Who's familiar with this acronym? SMART goals? Oh, yeah. I like it, and I don't like to change things too much. So if that works for you, that is actually a really good framework to craft some good goals. Now, where I would caution you is when we develop our goals, we want no more than 3 goals. What happens when we have more than 3 goals? Yeah, we kind of check out and don't get any of them done. Just like having a to-do list that's 10 things long. It's like, oh, shoot, I'm not going to get any of it done. So we're going to limit our goals to 1, 2, or 3 goals at most. And we are going to think about them from a SMART perspective. Are they specific? Meaning I'll know when I accomplish it. Is it measurable? Meaning I've got a number, some way to judge if I'm there or not, or how close I am to achieving it. Is it attainable? I like aspirational better, but that's my personal little flavor on it. Because I want to challenge myself, but I want to make it in a way that's realistic. Because when we set stretch goals or goals that are kind of impossible, our mind kind of checks out and it's like, that's not going to happen, right? So making it aspirational, though, that it's still challenging, but it's within reality. And that brings us to the R, which is relevant. So relevant to you, meaning you can influence it. Because if you're willing for something like, I want to win the lottery, well, good luck. You really don't have a lot of influence over that one. And then timely. So I like 3-year goals. So if you were to think about what I just asked you, what do you want? And think about it within 3 years. There's kind of a magic that happens on a 3-year time horizon. Within 1 year, we're pretty tactical. Oh, I'm going to aim for this project, this promotion. I want to go to this training program, this conference. We get really specific and don't push ourselves too much within the year because that's like, ooh, that's this year. I'm going to have to do something, right? 5 years from now, that's like pie in the sky, right? Well, who knows what the world's going to look like then, where I'm going to be, what my company's going to look like, what the industry's going to look like. There's a lot of big, hairy questions around that one. So I would offer a 3-year time horizon to think about. So think about, that gives you the ability to push a little bit beyond your limitations, beyond your current barriers, while not being too futuristic out there. Who has a 3-year plan? Just show of hands. Anyone have one? Oh, okay, a few. I asked this question in rooms of men, and so many men raise their hand. In rooms with women, though, it's usually something like this. A few hands are shown. So just think about that. So goals, and then next is competencies. So these are skills, behaviors, attributes. The HR world, the human resource world, loves these things because they inform training and how we measure performance. I will say that they are super helpful to focus on just, again, 3 key attributes, behaviors I want to improve this year. So for me, things like confidence, things like presence, things like writing skills. These are things that are absolutely critical to me living my purpose and achieving my goals. So again, this all maps. If we want to achieve our purpose statement, and it's somewhat aspirational, we need to set goals that map to making that happen. And then we need to have our competencies to make sure that we're able to live that purpose statement, meaning we have the skills, behaviors, attributes in order to live out that purpose. And then last but not least, and usually where people want to go right away, are the action steps. So I have this conversation a lot with women, and they will say, okay, I'm going to go get this book, or I'm going to sign up for this training program. We love to focus on the things we can do right away and take action on. So we will get there. But the beauty of setting the long-term vision is that the action steps actually become really, really easy once you know strategically where you're going. Then it becomes much more clear about the things I might ask for, the education I might pursue, the experiences that might be important to making that happen. And I'll share an example of how I break it down on kind of a 90-day short-term plan that maps to my overall purpose and goals. All right, so I mentioned I did a lot of research. So what I would say about successful women leaders that built winning career game plans is a couple stories. So while it was hard for me to start over mid-career, I remained humble and asked myself, what do I want? By answering that question, I had a good set of guardrails on what I wanted and what I did not want. I love this term, guardrails, okay? So think about your game plan as just that. We can't do everything, right? So putting some parameters. So when I asked you the question, what do you want? There's a lot that tells you about what you do not want, right? So I often use the example of I got deemed to be project manager a lot in my corporate experience. That was not in the what do I want column. That would have been the one outside what I do not want. Chances are that's same for you, whether that's a professional or personal experience or things that is, as hard as you try, you're not going to want to do. It's okay not to do those things. I think as women, we're afraid of letting people down or other people expecting this of us. But if it wasn't in your vision and it's not really important to you, it's okay to put that outside of those guardrails. The second story I want to share with you, my friend Sophie shared this, and I love this story. I had not managed people previously, and I was a high potential individual contributor. I knew I needed to show my potential, so I asked to manage a summer intern and had a great project for a business case. After successfully managing the intern, management could see I was a good leader. I was promoted soon after, even while pregnant. My manager did not drive it. It was all me. And I think sometimes we're waiting for someone else to open the door for us. We're waiting for permission. No one's going to give you the permission but you. And this is kind of a conundrum, right? How is she supposed to become a manager if she wasn't given experiences to manage? And often women are judged by performance and men are judged by potential. So there's research to support that we will say things like, well, he hasn't managed someone before, but sure, he's got the potential to do it. Or we'll look at a woman candidate with the same qualifications, like, we haven't seen her do that thing before, we're not sure, right? And that's because there's so few successful women leaders at the top of organizations. It's simply just hard for people to see it, and it's an unconscious bias that we hold towards women that's not fair, but the only choice we have is to navigate within those constraints. And so creating your own experiences, taking charge of your own career. If there's something you haven't done, figure out a way to dabble in it, to get experiences doing it so that you can do it in a big way. So kind of baby step it out and make it, own it. It is you in the driver's seat for this. So the first activity I'm going to have you do is what I call a SWOT analysis. So anyone know what a SWOT analysis? Yeah, we do these in the business world all the time. I did this with a group of military people, and they're like, SWAT? The SWAT team's coming in? Like, no. That is not the case here. So this is actually a tool that we use all the time in business. When I was studying in undergrad, I remember it was the first time I learned it way back when. And it's an acronym. We love acronyms in the business world. So it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So I'm going to have you do this exercise for yourself, okay? And so what I want you to do is answer the following questions. Strengths. What are you consistently getting positive feedback on? So think about your past performance reviews. Think about what people ask you to do. What seems to come really easily to you that other people, you're like, how is that so hard? How do you not know how to do this? But think about your strengths. For anyone that's taken StrengthsFinder, for example, or any personality assessment, it's going to give you some ideas on what you are good at. Also, think about where your energy comes from. What are the tasks that you kind of lose yourself in? For me, when I write, I just kind of, like, time doesn't exist. So that's strengths, that's number one, and I want you to start there. Anyone that already started with weaknesses, no, we're going to go back. So I want at least 10 strengths. We all have strengths, and if you're struggling, ask someone that cares about you, and they'll give you 20, I promise. So strengths first, weaknesses second, and I don't want any more than 3 weaknesses, okay? So after you're done with your strengths, then we go to weaknesses. And think about it, as hard as I try, I'm just never going to be amazing at this. So one for me, details. Details. Anything detail-oriented stresses me out. You're my friend. I need people like you. Yes, it's okay to have our allies fill out our weaknesses. So if I have to touch an Excel spreadsheet, which is always a dangerous situation, I close my office door, I light a candle, I play classical music, sing Kumbaya, and still manage to goof it up. And then I'll send a message to somebody like, I promise I didn't do anything, but it's not working, the formula's not working anymore. But you know what yours are. And give yourself permission not to be perfect. As women, we put such pressure on ourselves to be good at everything. This is the stuff on your list, it's like, I don't have to be good at that. It's okay. And guess what? We can ask other people for help. We don't have to do it all. We don't like to do that. This is an area I'm working on this year, is asking people for help. But think about the 3 things, not that they're not important, but they're not your natural strengths. And this probably has a lot to do with your personality, how you're wired, your natural tendencies. So again, for anybody that's done any sort of personality assessment out there, there's tons of clues in any of those that you could fill this in. For the purposes of today, though, just come up with 3, okay? Only 3. All right, and this is where it gets interesting. And this is the trickier part, and I sometimes get people confused in short talks with this one. So if you're struggling with this, I'm going to stay afterwards. I can answer your questions. Opportunities. Essentially, you want to take your strengths and flip them into opportunities. So how you might do that might be, hey, if a strength of mine is analytical skills, how can I use those skills more often? How can I put myself in a position so that people can see me as a critical analytical thinker? Okay? So we're going to make them strategic. So how can you use your strengths more is where opportunities comes into play. Then on the weakness side, how do I mitigate those weaknesses? So that's the threat piece. How do I put myself in a position so I'm not having to do those taxing things that as hard as I try, I don't want to do, and I don't need to do? Delegation is a great strategy there usually. Okay, so I'm going to have you put pen to paper on this. Again, 10 strengths, only 3 weaknesses, no more than that. And then flip your strengths into opportunities and flip those weaknesses into threats. Give you a minute or 2. And if you want to, I know in the risk of losing you all, I'll give you a minute or so to converse with somebody next to you. Have them fill them in. I encourage you to get feedback on this from people that care about you and know you well and that you have a lot of trust with. So if you have those people in the room today, share with them where you're at so far. So how about I give you 2 minutes and then we'll come back together. So you have to agree to listen in 2 minutes to come back together. Fair? All right. Go ahead and share what you have so far. How's it going? How's it going?
I need a lot more time to think about it.
I can see you tracking.
We're all working together.
Yeah.
Let's pull it. Come on, we can do this. Reflective would be one of those things. I need time to reflect.
That's a great strength.
That's a strength.
That's a strength. Yeah.
You can match it.
All right. So if we could get back your attention now. So this is the part where we want to come back together. So time out. All right. Who has something they'd want to share? Gonna come back together if we could. Someone in the audience that would want to share with a larger group. Hey, thank you. I love it. Thank you. Yes. All right, come back together. Come back together. This is always the risk in a large group. of letting you talk, and then it's like, how do I get your attention again? But I want to hear from you. I heard a few really good words as I was walking around the room, so I was listening to what you were saying. So I heard up here reflective. I heard over here analytical. Heard things about problem solving. I heard things about collaboration. What others? Anyone want to shout out something that popped up for them? Managerial courage. Oh, damn, that is good. I love that. I haven't heard that one before. I'm taking notes. That is great. I love it when I get a new one. Others? What, woo? Woo, oh, from StrengthsFinder? Yep, winning others over, right? Yep, I've got that one in mind too. Yeah, well, that you might have a speaking career ahead for you. Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Okay, so let's keep this in the forefront. So this is something I don't expect you to have fully done today. Again, get feedback on this from managers, past managers, mentors, sponsors, advocates, coaches, whoever you have in your corner. They're going to help this be better. So now we're going to think about our purpose statement, okay? And our purpose statement essentially answers the question, and you all know what people like to ask at networking events. What do people ask you? What do you do, right? Love that question, just love it. Right, and what do most people do when they're asked, what did they do? They ramble on for like 5 minutes about all the things they've done in their life and their resume, like, walks you through and you're like, what the heck? And at some point you just forget what the heck they're even talking about, right? So I would offer a purpose statement as a great way to proactively engage your audience in a way that you can learn about them and ask questions and more succinctly describe who you are, okay? So if I were to think about a purpose statement, the one I shared with you earlier visually is I develop leaders, train women to build winning career game plans while promoting gender equality. Super simple, it's 3 bullet points, which by the way, I love 3 bullet points. They stick in our brains. We can remember sequences of 3 far better than sequences of 4, 5, 6, or more. So what I want you to noodle on is reflect on the exercise that we did around what do you want? Okay, what did you see when you closed your eyes? Who's that future version of yourself? Think about yourself 3 years from now. What are you doing, right? I know, it's stretching your thinking, but I promise you know the answer. And then I want you to think about your SWOT. What are you really good at? Those strengths, those are great words to put in to your purpose statement. So essentially your purpose statement answers the question, what do you do? But it's also somewhat aspirational. Okay, so it's not necessarily what you do today. Now, if you're a project manager today, for example, or you're a student today, yeah, you could say, I'm studying this, I'm about this. Fast forward a little bit, push the envelope a little bit. How would you want to answer that question in the future? So if a future version of yourself was asked, what do you do? How would you describe it? What is it? 3 things. 3 things you want to be known for. Does that make sense? So this is where language becomes really important too. So when we say our purpose statement, we don't say, I'm trying, or I can. Okay, remember, brain doesn't believe that, does not compute. Instead, I am, I will, I present tense verb, okay? So when you're building this out, don't worry about wordsmithing it today, but if you had to put pen to paper and craft those 3 bullet points, make sure that your verbs are I am, I will, present tense verbs. Okay, make sense? I'll give you some headspace to think about this. If you could just get it 50% there today and be willing to share it with somebody that cares about you after today, that would be success, okay? Doesn't have to be perfect. Once we get to wordsmithing commas and thes and ands, that means you're pretty well set. Don't worry about it being perfect. So again, where this might live is in how you describe yourself on social media. If you have business cards, or it makes sense to put on your business cards. In any performance review that you go through, this is what I'm all about. Networking settings, this is how we describe ourselves. So these are instances in which Instead of having to go through and reinvent yourself every time somebody asks you, what do you do? What are you all about? You've got go-to language to answer that question. And again, there's been research done about this. If anyone's looking for some great women's leadership books, How Women Rise. Has anyone seen or read that book? Yeah, great book. But I love the example that they use in it about this elevator scenario, where it's a man and a woman in an elevator, and a senior exec comes in who happens to be a man. And the man walks into the elevator and shakes hands with both of them, and the junior level man goes right into, hey, sir, I started with this company 2 years ago. Here's what I want to do, and here are my goals. And the woman stands by in the corner and completely misses the opportunity to say what she wants, right? Because he had his purpose statement. He had it locked and loaded and like ready to go in that scenario. So it is important that we proactively communicate these things when we have an opportunity to be in front of an audience that perhaps help us, okay? The other thing I would say about the purpose statement is it really helps me with confidence. So when I step into a new setting, we all do this. You know, the fear of being judged or someone thinking that you're a fraud, like the imposter syndrome. This really helps me. Like, no, you are all about this. This is true. I believe this, right? So it kind of helps bolster up my confidence, helps me puff up a little bit when I need to. And so having this narrative, this self-talk in our head that's positive, that's true, that's affirming, really powerful stuff beyond just externally communicating it, internally communicating it to yourself. So when I first started my coaching business, we had to write a future story of ourselves. So I had to write a story of 3 years from now, what's Julie doing? And I had to cover like health and fitness, my financial wellness, spiritual, relationships, career, personal, all that stuff. And as I was writing it out, I actually started recording myself saying it. I know, this is where it gets a little weird. My husband was like, I cannot listen to I am a strong, powerful woman every night. But what I will say is the more I played my future story to myself, the more I reflected on it, the more I believed it, the more my behavior supported it. I got to the point where I was writing on masking tape positive affirmations, and I do this now in my journal every day, but I was putting them all over my office. My husband would come in like, dude, it looks like a beautiful mind in here. You got stuff all over the place. But I offer this is depending on where you are on your journey, let your purpose statement be visible to you. I have clients that write it on their post-it notes and put it on their rear view mirror, put it on their mirror where they get ready. They move it around so that they see it in different places. They journal about it. This can live a lot of different places, but weave it into your life so that it doesn't just stay on this piece of paper here with you today. Bring it into your own life. Okay, so now we're gonna set some goals. So we've got our vision, we've got our SWOT, we've got our purpose. Now we're gonna talk about goals. And I'll share with you 3 of my goals. So parameters around this one, we wanna think about the SMART pieces. We wanna kind of use that as a checklist of how to create a good goal. So specific, has a measurement, it's aspirational, it has relevance to you, and it's timely. The 3 I would share so when I talk about accountability, when I was writing Pivot Point, my first book, I wrote my game plan as I was doing the book. So I wrote my goals and put them in the book. So you can double check this. I have some copies outside. That I actually achieved all of those goals even shorter than the 3 years. But I will say, in writing them down and saying, I'm going to write 2 books, I'm like, whoa, I haven't even finished writing 1, you know? It's painful. Like, how do I know I'm going to do that? And if I write it down, I'm going to do it, right? Because again, we want to achieve what we set out. We want to hold ourselves accountable. So my goals as they stand today, develop and promote 3 speaking tools for my speaking business. So that means things like PowerPoints, that means things like what you're seeing today, creating new service offerings so that I'm continuing to be relevant. Another one, publish 3 best-selling books on leadership development. So I am noodling on a new topic. I don't know if we've hit best-selling status, but I feel good about where we are. And just staying on the forefront of these things. I was one of the first to write about men as allies, and now this year there's like 5 books coming out about men as allies, and that's pretty cool. I'm really excited that I got to be a part of that movement as it was beginning. And then speak to 5,000 people on diversity, leadership, and career development. And if you happen to notice, that's really, really succinct and in line with my purpose statement as well. So you see how your purpose statement kind of threads through these goals? So the gut check I like to have is based on my vision, based on my purpose statement, based on what I know to be true about my SWOT analysis, what will I achieve? Okay, so ask yourself that question. What are the 1, 2, or 3 things that will demonstrate that I have achieved my purpose statement? Will take full advantage of the things I know to be true of my strengths, my weaknesses, my opportunities, and threats. That will take me a step closer to what do I want as my vision. So if you had to write 3 things, and stretch yourself here. This isn't necessarily 3 things this year. We'll talk about the action steps next. These are 3 things in 3 years. What are 3 big goals you'd put out in the universe in the next 3 years? If you want to write a book, that'd be a great one. Maybe you want to start a business. Maybe you want to pivot into a different industry, and you don't even know what that is right now. That's okay. Maybe you want to go back to school. What are some big goals you can put out there for you that will demonstrate that you are living aligned with your purpose statement? Okay, make sense? So go ahead and put pen to paper on these, and if it's, again, 50% there, that is completely fine. But reflect on how you've spent the day today. What were some big ahas you had? What were the light bulb moments that you had? Like, oh, I could do that, or what about that? Write it down. Instead of it just being an idea or this crazy thought I had at a women's conference, I'll tell you, as someone that left a women's conference, writing down on a napkin ideas, the minute that I wrote it down, it started to come to life. So just write it down. And if it's scary, for sure, write it down. Anything we haven't done before is always going to feel scary. I love it when I'm coaching my clients and they'll say things like, I've never done that before. I don't know if I can do that. Well, you've never done whatever you're doing right now. There was a point in time where you hadn't done that before, right? Remind yourself of your past successes. Remind yourself of all those positive accolades you've gotten on performance reviews, from managers, from mentors. Channel those and think about, how will I live that forward? What would be 1, 2, or 3 things that would define success further out? Okay, I'll pause and let you think for a minute. And you didn't know all this heavy thinking was going to happen at the end of the conference, did you? All right, I promised to kind of wrap us up here in the next 10 minutes, and if you have questions, I want to be sure to answer those as well. So prioritizing competencies. I explained this a bit earlier, but a competency, if you're in the corporate environment, we love competencies, right? They're likely on your performance review. They're usually hiring criteria for different jobs, but essentially they mean skills, behaviors, or attributes. So they're, in general, things that we want to, skills that we want to get better at, behaviors that we want to demonstrate more, attributes that we want to be known for, okay? There's over 200 different combinations of competencies out there. So if you do a quick Google search, you'll see a document that's a little overwhelming, to be honest. But I want you to think about, with regards, again, to your career game plan and your purpose and what you want and where you're going and what's aligned with your strengths and not with your weaknesses. I want you to now think about, what are the 1, 2, or 3, again, rule of 3, what are the 3 things I want to be known for? And for me, being a speaker, a trainer, a consultant, a coach, my 3 words, and these are actually my 3 words for this year, are growth, delegation, and writing. These are things that I firmly believe in. These are things that give me energy. These are things on my strengths list. These are things that help me achieve my purpose statement. These are things when I close my eyes and I think about what I want, this is what I want. And I'll challenge you again to live these out. I had a coach that told me to set phone alarms with my words for the year. So I did this last year. I picked 3 words for the year. I did it again this year. And every day at 10 o'clock, I get a reminder of growth. Like, yep, I'm about growth. Then at 1 o'clock, delegation. Then at 4 o'clock, writing. And they're just subtle little nudges of like, Julie, you said you'd do those things. Are you living in alignment with your purpose? And I will say it is slightly annoying when it goes off and I'm in a meeting. But it really keeps me in check. I'll show you a picture of my whiteboard, and I'm a very visual person. So if you're a visual person, most people tend to be more visual. Some of us are auditory, some of us are kinesthetic, but the majority of people tend to be visual. So I would encourage you to have visual techniques to live this out. So on my whiteboard, front and center, these guys are hanging out. And guess what? My goals are mapped to growth. I have a number of hours a week I want to delegate. Or I am delegating. I just said want. That was a weak word. I am delegating. And then I am writing. So I've made these really specific, and I keep them everywhere to continue to focus myself on these are the things that are important for me to be aligned with my purpose. Okay, so put pen to paper, think about the 1, 2, or 3 skills, behaviors, attributes, competencies that will be important for you and your purpose. When I was first starting Pivot Point, presence, confidence, facilitation skills, these were all really important things. It informed how I spent my professional development budget. It informed the choices I made on conferences to attend. So once you put pen to paper on these, they become a filter of which you make decisions, right? So that's the thing about the game plan. Once you have it out there, anytime someone wants to distract you with something else, because distractions come everywhere, right? You see something shiny on social media, or you read a book and you have a whole new perspective on life. Go back to your game plan and think, is this in bounds or out of bounds? Right? Those guardrails, is it where I want to be? Or is this noise? Is this a distraction? And these words really, really help me. Because I could be doing a lot of fun stuff right now besides those 3 things. And guess what? Delegation makes me feel deeply uncomfortable. But that's how you grow, right? By being outside of the comfort zone. We don't grow when we're comfortable. All right, so think about those competencies. And then the last piece we're going to talk about, I promised I'd show you a piece of my whiteboard. So what I do every month, I reset my goals for the next 90 days. So I'm a firm believer, you can't forecast out specific action steps probably any more than 3, maybe 6 months if you're really know what's coming at you. For me, 90 days is about all I can see and for my business. And so what I do is I have my purpose statement out on the whiteboard. I have my goals. I have my competencies there. I have the things for the year that I'm focused on. And then I have different buckets. So what I'm sharing with you right now, this week, I'm doing 1, 2, or 3 things. No more than 3, because if I put more than 3 on my to-do list, it's not going to happen. Then I put each month on a column. So right now, I'd have March, April, May. 3 things, 3 key initiatives that I will pursue each month. Maybe it's reading a book. Maybe it's creating a new workshop. Maybe it's getting my podcast restarted. Whatever it is. And then the secret to it, and how this is different than a to-do list process, is I check in with my goals. I check in with my purpose statement. Is this helping me achieve my purpose statement? Is this helping me achieve my goals? Because if it's not, it doesn't get to go on the list. There's a lot of things we want to say yes to. But remind yourself, when you're saying yes to someone else's request, you're saying no to yourself. It's okay to say no. I know, it feels really uncomfortable the first time, and then it's really empowering. I had a client that just asked me to speak on the phone for an hour, and we've already spent 2 hours talking about what she wants to talk about for another hour. And I thought to myself, like, this is a great opportunity to say no, and I actually felt really good about it. But this is something I have been practicing, right? And I simply said, I don't have the availability next week. How about you send your thoughts via email? I'd be happy to look at them, right? Instead, if I would have said yes to her, I would have been saying no to me. I would have been saying no to my writing, which was really, really important to me. I would have been saying no to myself and my plan that I know is really important. So think about, what will you say yes to? What will you put on your list that you're going to be like fired up to do? It's going to be those days that are your very best days. What are the activities? What are the key things that you can do? So big, bold goals, our purpose statement, our goals, right, are aspirational, they're future, they're forward thinking. But our action steps are like the baby steps to get there. So when you take a big goal and you break it down into steps, it becomes a lot easier. You get some positive momentum, right? It was one thing to say I was going to write a book. It was a whole other thing to say, well, I'll just do some research and write an outline. That's an easy step one, right? And then suddenly I was like, well, I could write an introduction. Oh, shoot, chapter 1's next, chapter 2, chapter 3. Oh, wow, I just did that, right? So take your big goal and make it smaller and put a forecast to it, like a 90-day forecast, and use a visual technique for it. So before we wrap up, I do want to hear from you. I want to hear, giving you a lot of ideas today, and please know I'm going to hang out right outside the door after this. So I brought some books, I brought some handouts. You can sign up to get my workbook and get all of these slides. So I saw some of you taking pictures. I gladly send it to you. I just need your email address. Excellent, excellent. So stop by and see me, ask me any of your questions. But what's one thing you've taken away from this conversation, and perhaps one thing you've taken away from the day that we've all spent together? It's easy to get inspired, and I know you're gonna be like all revved up when you leave and like have this awesome weekend, and then Monday happens, right? You're like, oh shoot, I got all this email to answer. Oh, someone's got a request. Everyone else's to-dos suddenly become my to-dos. Don't let that happen. Put one thing you'll do as a result of what we've talked about today. And if you want to pursue the career game plan, perhaps it's working on your purpose statement this weekend or next week. It doesn't have to be right now. Perhaps it's getting input on my SWOT analysis. Perhaps it's noodling on that visioning exercise a little bit more. But just pick one thing. Just make it super simple, one thing you will commit to doing, and write it down. Anyone want to jump in and share? Opportunity for a couple people to share their one thing. Yeah, please. Yeah. Break it down. Yeah, it's really helpful for me. Like, shoot, I did say that. Oh, good reminder. And some days are better than others. Yeah. The phone alarm. Yes. Others?
She said phone alarm.
Oh. Not the same thing. Others? Stay in touch with me. My email address is right there. Again, I'm happy to send all the slides. I'll be outside to answer any of your questions that you might have. And we have books, 2 for $20, one and Pivot Point. I have several copies of each one of those if you're interested. I also have some stickers with our mantra from the book. It's a really nice positive mantra to take away. So feel free to grab any of those. They're all complimentary. I appreciate you having me today. This has been so fun. Thank you.